Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi, that's a different face than Richard.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear, but I'm not Richard. That's true.
Yeah, yeah. So
That is
everyone,
true.
thank you for joining. Welcome to another session of Azure Unpacked, episode 3. I have to say. And today, Richard unfortunately couldn't make it, and so I asked my colleague and friend Gert-Jan to join.
Yes.
So welcome and thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me, Wesley.
How do we
Thank
pronounce your
you.
name in English? Do we Englishify it? Is that a word? Englishify?
Oh man.
Do we say Gert-Jan? Just
I,
Gert-Jan.
Gert-Jan. Back in school when we had the English classes, they always called me Gordon John, but that you can immediately yeah,
Gordon John.
Gordon John. Yeah, that was a horrific pronoun. But yeah, it is what it is.
That's gonna stick. You know that, right?
Yes, definitely. So, Gert-Jan it is.
All right. Well, thank you for joining, and we've done done some
Yeah,
sessions before together. I think we
yeah,
did the whole season of Talking Out Cloud, the Intercept podcast last season.
yes. That was
So
fun.
that was a lot of fun. It was. It
Yeah,
was. But
definitely.
for anyone that does not know, what do you do at Intercept?
What do I do? I do Azure stuff. Now I'm an Azure architect with Intercept. I've been working for 2 years now with Intercept. And yeah, lots of things with Azure projects, designs, incidents because incidents happens in Azure as well. Troubleshooting, giving advice, course recommendations, all kind of stuff.
All right. So Azure. And you have
Azure.
like a traditional consultancy background, right? Like back in the day, the troubleshooting, domains.
Yeah. Oh
Right.
man. I think I started in the IT when I was 90 years old. So I think I have 20 years of IT experience right now. Starting as an help desk employee, service desk employee, going the whole route.
Right.
I think I started with Azure 6 years ago as a consultant, and before that it was a system engineer function. And now I'm promoted to an Azure architect. I think last year. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
really cool.
So, question for you.
Yeah,
So you started on-prem and we had like data centers and with Hyper-V and VMware, and then we had public cloud.
yeah.
So what was public cloud like the big game changer, or was it just the next step in virtualization for you?
I think it was the next step. We had a step back in the days that we did the whole fee of the physical machines going to a data center.
Mhm.
Um, and the next step was, I think, the natural step for me was the public cloud. The reason why is that it's already in a data center, and public cloud is a big data center. So the next step was naturally for me, yes, public cloud, definitely. Yeah,
All right. And then, well, we still had familiar things like networking, and we took that experience from on-prem networking to Azure. It was quite a change, I can imagine.
I think that's the biggest change, right? Because you had the networking physically is totally different than for the public cloud, because it's software layer networking in Azure or in another public cloud. So
Right.
routing is a different thing. And I think that's a game changer in public cloud.
So would you say, so we're talking about software-defined networking in Azure, right? The public cloud
Yeah,
is software-defined
yeah.
networking. We can no longer log into that Cisco switch and
Nope.
check the ARP table or do some routing or modify the
No.
access list.
Yes.
Configure the spanning tree protocol. Oh, that brings us back to the old days.
Spanning tree.
But
That's
yeah. Okay,
oh
so
man.
so you no longer control that in the
No.
public cloud. So you could
No.
say, okay, so some complex things were migrated away. So for example, I did my CCNA and CCNP back in the day when you also had to look at things like OSPF, Open Short Path First, stuff like that, BGP. You no longer have to manually configure that because
No.
in cloud everything happens out of the box. But would you
Yes.
say that, well, this is almost like a suggestive question, that you need more knowledge of networking in the public cloud or a more thorough understanding of networking in the public cloud as opposed to on-prem? Because a lot of it is
Mhm.
a magical box that you don't see in access.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think yes. You need to know how the routing is, how the trace is following the path, right? Because if you, for example, do a trace route from an on-premise device to, for example, a firewall from a computer, or do it in the public cloud, then you will have a different path, right?
Mhm.
Because in the Azure firewall, you have maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 IP addresses, but what is being on the backbone, what you cannot see in front, than an on-premise device, because that's only one IP address and that's your front end, and you control everything inside of that device. So yeah, I think you have so you need to have more experience, or you need to have more logical experience of knowledge about
Like
routing.
foundational knowledge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I would agree with that. If I look at my own personal experience, when I did traditional on-prem networking and you wanted to fix something, you just started, you logged into the console and just started adding routes and removing routes, and then all of a
Yes.
sudden, hey, it works, because trial and
Yeah.
error was a thing. It's still a thing.
Yeah.
In troubleshooting, trial and error is a thing. So even
Yeah.
if you did not have all the foundational knowledge that you needed to manage the environment, with some trial and erroring, you could still get there.
Exactly.
Now, with software-defined networking, I mean, any networking change in Azure, it's not instant. It takes seconds, minutes, sometimes more to propagate. Look at configuring Azure Firewall. You make a
Oh,
change in
yeah.
Azure Firewall. Is it instant or is it in 15 minutes? We don't know.
I always say wait for 50 minutes if it's going to work, and if not, turn back the change.
Yeah.
And it's different for a physical device.
Yes, because there you could still trace back your steps. But then
Yeah.
if you make too many changes in software-defined networking in Azure, when it works, what was
Yeah.
the solution? Do you still? So yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, I agree. I think we need more knowledge, more foundational network knowledge and skills when you use public clouds. And when it comes to networking, you need that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You
think
need
that's
to
a good conclusion.
Yeah.
That's a really good conclusion.
All right. And then when we build networks in Azure, we have, you have to design a network.
Yeah.
Hub-spoke topologies, which is what this show is about today. Hub-spoke topologies. Do we need them?
It depends on the situation, but I think for the majority of the designs, yes. But don't complicate it too much. But hub-spoke, yeah. In my case, the most designs I do is based on hub-spoke methodology. Yes, definitely. And how about you?
Mostly hub-spoke. I think there's been an evolution there. So because in traditional networking back in the day, you wouldn't do hub-spoke as much, or at least I wouldn't. It was more like flat networks with a DMZ, etc. And well, technically, if you had a DMZ, you could still say you would do hub-spoke networking, but usually it was a bit different. But now in Azure, the thing is that when you do, the whole concept of VNet peering, you start connecting different VNets, and then in the end, you don't know what ends up being able to access what, right? It's just becoming one big mesh of things. So that's how it stopped. At first, we would just lift and shift everything and move it to Azure. We would copy the on-prem network, and then we'd say, oh, we don't have virtual LANs, we don't have VLANs, so we solve that like this and that, but we do have access lists, which are NSGs, but everything within the same subnet has access to everything within the same subnet, VNet, blah, blah, blah. And back then, we didn't even have VNet peering. We had to configure a VPN gateway from one VNet to the other, right? To connect VNet. So I think when it started, or when we started migrating machines to Azure, the hub-spoke topologies were not a big thing.
No.
We just moved. But then again, the use of public cloud, I keep saying back in the day, it's not that long ago.
It's
4
or 5 years ago, maybe.
Okay, yeah. So in IT terms, it's like ancient configurations. But back in the day, we would just change our hoster. We would go from an on-prem. So we invested in data center. We invested in hardware. It was written off. We needed to invest in new hardware. But hey, we could also pay per month and then move it to Azure, and we have a lot of additional features. So we just changed hosters, and in some cases we just lifted and shifted the problem. But that also means we lift and shifted, and even things like Azure Migrate and stuff, they would replicate the on-prem environment in Azure, so you would have the same networking. So HubSpoke wasn't a thing, but then years into public cloud, hey, security, we don't want everything to go over the Azure backbone, so the different regions or the public internet. We want everything to remain within our networks.
Controlled, yeah.
So if you have multiple VNets and you pair them, everything talks to each other. So yes, we're doing everything in VNets, but everything talks to each other. So we do have separation. This goes into that VNet, this goes into that VNet, and then we have different subnets. We may even do routing tables and all that. But it was still everything connects to each other. And that's when the hub became important. If you want separation.
I think it's, really important. Yeah. Because if you besides the hub, if you look at the effective route, for example, in a virtual machine, you will be amazed how many IP addresses and how many routes it will have without a hub-spoke methodology. And if you have paired everything together, and that's also scary. And default, the most devices have an outbound connection to the internet. So you want to control that as well, I think, in a hub-spoke. Using a hub-spoke, I need to say.
Yeah, you could even argue that it should be like a governance standard. Hey, it has to be hub-spoke because we see an environment that's heavily growing. We deploy new services, so maybe virtual machines, so maybe it's different products in different networks and different subscriptions, different departments. Let's say you're an enterprise with 60 departments that build different services. You want to control that traffic because if you do the VNet peering, which is the click of a button, what if one pair is compromised? Then all the pairs pick up. So there's a big security aspect here.
Definitely.
So then you would say you have, and then for people not understanding hub-spoke, let's say you have the wheel of a bike, and the center node is the hub, and then you have all the spokes of the wheel. That's hub-spoke. So everything goes back to the hub, and then the hub. So what would go into the hub? What services would you deploy in the hub VNet?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think the only thing I will place in a hub, or maybe call it a connectivity subscription, maybe, or a connectivity hub, is probably Azure Firewall. You can debate on using a front door, maybe, but I will place a front door or an application gateway, a layer 7 application in another subscription, probably. But it also depends on the use case and on the customer. But mainly in my connectivity script, I only want to have connectivity items, and that can be in firewall. Am I missing something?
No, I think from a networking perspective, I would say, Express routes, Azure Firewall.
A VPN gateway. Yeah.
Maybe Azure Bastion because it supports the VNet peering. I would put that there. And then that also comes up with, Simon has a question here, which probably taps into that. If you have an NVA like a FortiGate or a Sophos, does that also? So, well, that's a connectivity thing. And also it depends where the connectivity is coming from. Or, well, no, maybe that should still... Connectivity doesn't always mean outside connectivity, right? Let's say you have third parties or other ISPs that you connect to, or VPNs that should also all be managed in the hub environment. But that also raises another question that we briefly discussed before the show. What do we think about NVAs, network virtual appliances?
You spoke of it in the beginning of the session. If you look at the, for example, a FortiGate or a Cisco device or Sonic Wall, something like those brands, you can have that as an NVA in your subscription. There are really good devices to use if you don't want to use an Azure firewall, for example. But it also depends on the use case of what kind of resources you want to connect to use that NVA. So if you want, for example, want to have site-to-site, point-to-site connections as well, and you don't want to build a VPN gateway in your hub, then and you want to have a firewall solution all in one, then an NVA can be a possible solution. Definitely.
So
But
personally, I prefer an NVA. Why?
Yeah.
Because I like how flexible they are. I think a lot of so let's say I want to have and there was a colleague internally that started discussing this as well.
True.
Let's say I need site-side VPN, I need a point-site VPN, I need a firewall, I need a web application firewall, and I need some fancy routing. In Azure, I would need a front-door application gateway. I would need an Azure firewall. I would probably need a net gateway to ensure that we don't have port exhaustion and all that stuff. So I would need all that. Or I buy a license and I deploy a network virtual appliance, and I could even do 2, like in a cluster format, or
we have all that.
There's a pricing thing here as well. But then again, there's also a benefit to using native Azure services because updates, availability, etc. Installation. So
I think that's, and also knowledge, right? Because you need to have knowledge about from a FortiGate or from another.
Yes, you need an additional skill set. Yeah.
So old school routing is needed. Old school networking is needed if you want to use an NVA, I guess.
But I would also say that also brings back the ability to do quick troubleshooting and all that, because when I make a configuration on an NVA, so the third-party software, it applies instantly, and I don't have to wait for Azure to propagate changes into the software-defined network. So, but back to the hub. So you said networking, a networking hub, you would have VPN gateway, Bastion, Azure firewall, etc. I would say that the whole concept of hub, but we're talking about network hubs here, but I would also argue that the whole concept of a hub is broader, like a hub subscription, management groups, etc. I would even say that in a hub, that's also where your identity lives. Every first entrance into anything to the hub should be in a hub, whether it's a networking hub, subscription, Enter ID, anything. And I would also argue that you don't even have to be that big before implementing hub-spoke architectures.
It's not the most. Let me put it else. If you begin to build a network, it is not that much effort to build a hub-spoke or a hub. Then do, for example, an out-of-the-box network. Okay, here's my VNet, and I pair them to another VNet. Just start with the hub because that's not the most effort to do. I think it's not. I think that's your base, your fundament for future purposes.
And it's also hard to change afterwards, right? Let's say you already have 100 virtual machines. Good luck implementing a hub-spoke later on.
You cannot do it in a production of it's doable, but then you will have outage and maintenance, and you need maintenance windows to implement all those changes into a hub-spoke. So most of the time you build if you want to implement a hub-spoke in an existing environment, you are building the hub-spoke next to the existing environment, and you are going to move your resources to the hub-spoke. So you can better start at the beginning with a hub-spoke.
And I think the biggest challenge there is when you do it afterwards.
That's the biggest.
everyone, all those networks are already paired, and there are routing tables in place. And I can assure anyone, you will have significant technical depth in routing tables, peerings, etc. So when you did a project like this, right, where you move the customer into a HubSpot from on-prem and Azure, and then into the amount of
time
and also the amount of answers. Oh, we didn't realize that the network flow was like this or like that. The amount of time, that is so much time.
It's so much time, and it's funny. You think you have prepared everything well, but you have a combination of software defined networking and with some devices on-prem and device in the cloud. So you will have the problem with asynchronous routing. And so you get traffic to all the necessary devices, but you don't get an answer back. And in practice, you will that was something I learned in practice. During practice, I guess. Yeah, definitely.
I remember that project.
Yeah.
All right. So when you do a HubSpot, to your opinion, is there then still a scenario where it's acceptable to pair two spoke networks? So let's say I have HubSpot, everything goes to the hub, but then spoke A and spoke C. So let's say I have a spoke with my finance application and I have a spoke with my HR application, and they need to communicate. Is it acceptable to do a pairing, or do you say nope, it's forbidden by law? It goes through the hub.
I don't want to offend anybody, but I say you need to pair it to the hub, place your routing tables and your Azure firewall or your NVA to point back. So you will get a direction to the hub, and the hub will go left or right to the necessary device or subscription. Because if you are going to place the pairing between the spokes, it is actually maybe more like a star network you are creating then, I think. Out of my, but I don't know. But also you compromise traffic that is not going through the firewall. Also the inbound traffic. So it can be a security breach if you do it like that.
Yeah. So let's say I think the whole concept of IDS IPS is really interesting. And so if you have an IDS or IPS, so intrusion detection system or intrusion prevention system, you also want to place that in a hub. Let's say the scenario is everything goes through the hub, and this explains your security concern. I have the finance application, but that finance application also has a outbound connectivity, or for whatever reason. And then we have the HR application, but they all go through the hub. Let's say for some reason the finance application is compromised. And then you have the concept, system is compromised, a lateral movement. Let's move into different systems and see how much we can compromise. If that has to go through the hub and you have an IPS or an IDS at least, it can be detected as saying, hey, compromised lateral movement into that network. And if it's prevention, it will probably block it, hopefully. But depends on how much money you want to spend. But let's say that's the case. If you have paired them directly, so I have my hub, but then finance talks to HR directly, they can also compromise the HR system from the finance. And then, that's the risk. So I would say yes, by punishment of whatever we cannot name here, you do not pair different networks when you have HubSpot networking. It just goes to the hub.
No, and especially not with designs when you do single tenant, multi-tenant, etc. So, because if you have a tenant per customer, for example, that's a no-go. That's a no-go.
And it's also a matter of mindset, right? Once you accept, the exception, it becomes easier to accept the next exception. So you keep making exceptions, and at some point,
it is built with exceptions all to each other, and that's I think also that's a mistake most of the time will be taken when you have not think about it beforehand, or drown out a network visualization, for example. So if I can give a tip, always start with a drawing, a visualization about how you will want to get your network flow going in the cloud. Yeah, the flow.
Yeah. Don't just draw the network, draw the flow of the traffic that's needed.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you will end up in a project. And as we're all consultants, engineers, architects, we want to help the customers. There's this other use case. We need FTP access. We forgot about that. Let's do that directly for now so we can continue the project. No, that's just no.
No.
And that then the next question comes, like, we are consultants, architects, engineers. When the customer asks and comes with a problem, we say, yes, we're going to fix it for you. We're going to fix it. And
always.
Okay. So we'll go above and beyond, and we'll break some rules, and we'll get it up and running because we can, and also because we want to help the customer. You could argue that the management, so in bigger organizations, like not small to medium, but like corporate, you could say the hub environment, hub networking, identity management should be managed by a separate team that just manages that part of the platform and forces those rules upon all the spokes, so that if, let's say, I would work as a consultant and I would deploy a new Azure environment in a spoke, I would be forced to design it so it communicates. If I want to use networking features, it has to connect to the hub.
Yeah.
I cannot do it any other way. But if I'm in control of both parts, I can make some adjustments here so that my stuff over here works. And I think that the separation of duties and responsibilities also really matters here when it comes to HubSpoke. It's not just technology; it's responsibility and accountability as well.
That's almost the same as 15 years ago when you have your separate network team and your separate. So you have someone separate that doing the routing.
Yeah.
So there's not that much different that you want to have in the Azure environment, I think.
Yeah, but it also comes. So how much different is IT now from back then? Which is
maybe it's naming differently, layered differently, but in the end, it's still the same technique.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. So HubSpoke networking, or Bastion, or firewalls, everything goes into the hub, and then you have a spoke. And then would you have a spoke per application? Would you have a spoke per environment? Would you have a spoke per, I don't know, prod, dev? What do you come across?
That is also evolving, I guess. So I had a time, and that's a couple of years ago, that people are saying you need to do it like for production environments, test environments, etc. And I think now, if I now need to choose, then I want to do it for workloads. So if we have a different workload, you can separate it, or you can also separate it by application if you want. One of those two, but I prefer maybe workloads and applications.
Right, so I would get a VNet per application. And then what if I have prod and dev for that application? Does that go into the same VNet, or do I then get a VNet for application A prod, application A dev?
Yeah.
Or do we do
normally if I think you need to take account with the subnet calculation when you do a data environment, that you separate it from VNet, or you can also maybe do it in subnet, but maybe VNet is easier. Also when routing traffic to the firewall, because you want to test the same outcome for your production environment as for your test environment and for your acceptance environment. So a different VNet would be plausible.
It's kind of a trick question, right? Because you also have costs, like for peering, even into region. You pay, I think. Well, what did you say before the show? Like 1 cent per.
1 cent per data, what's flowing over the peering, right? And it will be expensive when it's outside of the region.
Yeah. So even for inter-region peering, you pay.
Yeah.
It's not a lot. So if it's not a lot of data, then it should be fine.
No.
The trick in this question is, the answer is always, it depends. I would. It's always in IT. So how do you do? It depends. I would argue that before you make a decision there, you need to map what needs to access what and who needs to access what. So let's say, back to the example of per workload, but then we have a workload, let's say it's the finance application that comes with, I don't know, an app server, an Azure SQL database, and a storage account, and maybe a VM for some legacy processing of whatever. That goes then into a spoke VNet, right? That's the workload.
Yeah.
And that's then the prod environment. If you have an acceptance environment and test environment, and different people access the test environment than they do the production environment, so they're different audiences and different network flows, then I would separate them into different VNets, because I mean, maybe I don't know, Dean from the IT department does access the acceptance server, but someone from another department access the production server. They're different audiences. I would separate.
True. That's a really good point. And also don't, because I also see that sometimes in practice that people are connecting the prod and the test VNet then together, but you also don't need to do that. Just route it back to the Azure firewall, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Okay. So it's the learning here is not, this is exactly how you have to deploy HubSpoke, even though we're pretty clear that this goes into a hub, like the network virtual appliance, the Azure firewall, Azure Bastion, and then everything else should be connected to. So for example, if a front door is used for all the environments, then it might even be hub, or maybe you create a shared subscription. You could do that as well. But so the hub is pretty small and it should be containable. You don't want to deploy a VM in the hub for it's used for finance, for example. That the hub is not a DMZ. The hub is your connectivity environment.
The only virtual machine you can probably build in the hub is when you do an NVA. You need compute resources for the NVA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the spoke requires careful design.
Careful design. And careful network design, I guess. Visualization of the environment. Yes.
Right. Well, that's pretty clear. And we're also coming up on time. But
cool.
Yeah, I do see a big future for HubSpoke networking. It is, for me, it already is the standard. And like maybe there's an exception because of a very small environment, but in the end, usually HubSpoke is the way to go.
I cannot think about anything different anymore, to be honest. That's my first reaction. Okay, let's implement the HubSpoke.
Yeah, but it's a very big question. It's so one of the key learnings here is when you start with a new Azure environment, because we want everything to be integrated into networking components, whether that's because of latency or security or whatever. You want to have a design for your network. Rule number one: create a design, draw out your networking flows, have your peers challenge them, and have the customer challenge them, because once it's there, it's there.
True.
And then, governance is a thing. Make sure you make the right people responsible for the hub.
Less people, not that much. Yeah, don't just select a group of people with specific knowledge. That's important, I guess.
Right, and then I can understand that this is it's not complex when you talk about the philosophy of all this, but it gets complex when you have to design it, because lots of questions. So if anyone's ever interested in talking about that, I mean, you can book a one-on-one with our experts.
Yes.
And would love to chat to you about this. If you have any questions, scan the QR code. It will take you to a website, book a session, and hopefully we'll get to see you there. As we're coming up on time, I really enjoyed it hosting this show.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah,
it brings us back to the podcasting days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that was fun. It was also fun right now.
Yeah, it was. We'll see if Richard is back next time already. And if he is, then he's here. And then if not, I happily invite you again to join me on this show.
I'd love to be able to. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you for your time. Cool. Thank you everyone for watching. And if you're watching later, thank you for watching. Have a good day, and see you on episode 4.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.